The haunting melody you've just heard for the letter G is the much-loved ballad Greensleeves, which dates from the 16th century. There's a tradition that it was actually written by King Henry VIII for Anne Boleyn, one of the wives he subsequently beheaded, though, fortunately, not until after she had produced the daughter who was to be one of our greatest monarchs, Elizabeth I, Gloriana herself, from whose glorious reign this country's greatness was to derive, not only in wealth and power, but in all the arts, not least among them the art of drama, with the genius of Shakespeare and his contemporaries. And now, after that lovely introduction, we'll have our usual opening sentence. Then Bertie and Pandora will be ready to guide us through the letter G.
Gordon's phlegmatic surgeon shouldn't go infringing foreign regimes' paradigms. As you will have heard from this eccentric opening sentence, the letter G can be hard or soft or silent.
Let's start with the basic hard G sound, which is another dorsal, like the hard C, produced by the back of the upper surface of your tongue pressed against your palate.
To make it, you open your mouth slightly, keep the tip of your tongue pressed down behind your bottom teeth, and press the back of your tongue against the back of the roof of your mouth, exactly as for hard C.
Except that this time you retract your tongue further, about as far as it will comfortably go, and it presses against your palate further back than for hard C.
You also pull back your chin for hard G, but not for hard C.
As with hard C, the hard G sound can be made either by producing air as the chin and tongue are dropped, or by using the air of a previous letter as the chin and tongue are pushed up.
Listen as we make the hard C and hard G sounds, and say some words containing them.
K, G, K, G, cog, clang, crag, geek, gunk.
K, G, K, G, K, G. Geek, gunk, Greek.
Now you practice pronouncing those two dorsal sounds, hard C and hard G, exactly as you heard them. Then say those words.
And let's have some more hard G words. Listen to these. Gate, get, guilt, guilt, girl, give, go, got, golf, guard, gulf.
Bag, beg, big, bog, blog, brag, cigar, cigarette.
Dig, dog, drag, drug, grade, beg, egg, eagle, god, good.
Peg, pig, pregnant, signature, argue, argument, plague, vague, fugue, tongue.
Now you say those words.
Noting the unexpected pronunciation of the letter O in tongue.
And though I'm sure you are now getting quite good at following a hard consonant with R, as with brag, crag and drag, I think we should just practice a few words with this troublesome letter following hard G. Listen to these.
Grab, grain, grate, Gresham, grill, gross, group, grumble, angry.
Now you say those words.
To make the soft G sound, protrude your lips in the cartoon kiss position and press the tip of your tongue against the roof of your mouth behind, but not touching, your upper front teeth. Then drop your jaw and tongue and let the air come out above your tongue as it drops. Watch my lips carefully as I make the sound. J, j, j.
We practiced this when we did the DGE words earlier, but let's practice again with the simple GE sound.
We can use the list of words we tried when we looked at silent E when it followed the letter G to soften it, and we'll add a few further examples. Watch our mouths and listen carefully.
Age, cage, jail, gauge, stage, wage.
Infringe, message, page, sage, oblige, urgent, agent.
College, pigeon, privilege.
Sturgeon, surgeon, burgeon, dungeon. Now you say those words. I'm sure you'll find they're getting easier now.
Now let me give you a little general rule for hard and soft G. The letter G is always hard
When followed by the vowels A, O, U, or by the consonants L and R, as in again, gain, gander, God, gone, guard, gulp, angle, glimpse, conglomeration, and grip.
when it ends a word, as in bag and ring, though the sound is weaker when it follows the letter N.
And this includes every present participle ing word ending and nouns derived from them, as we've just heard in word ending.
And when a suffix is added to a word whose basic form has ended in hard G.
For example, the word ring keeps its hard G when a suffix is added, for example, ing to make the present participle ringing or the noun derived from it.
ER to make the agent noun ringer.
Or s to make the plural of the noun rings, which could also be the third person singular of the verb.
The letter G, though not necessarily double G, which is often hard, is always soft when followed by Y or by the silent E, as in Jim, rage, privilege.
And the wonderful expression argy-bargy, meaning a ding-dong row, usually between husband and wife, that wakes all the neighbours.
The word garage,
Or garage, the pronunciation of which we discussed under AGE endings.
nicely illustrates this general rule.
Note also that when a verb in its basic form ends with a soft G, followed and made soft by a silent E, for example, rage, it drops the silent E when adding the present participle ending ing, but it retains the soft G sound whose softness has already been established. Raging.
Compare this with the verb rag, meaning make fun of, which ends in hard G and needs to double it when making the present participle ragging, or the past tense and participle ragged, to keep the hardness of the G, and so distinguish it from raging and raged.
And just to complicate things further, remember that this word is different in meaning and pronunciation from the identical looking ragged, which is an adjective, unusually having its E sounded as in sacred and naked, and meaning dressed in rags, shaggy or uneven.
Let's put these words in a little sentence. The ragged gypsy raged when Nigel's girls ragged him.
It was cruel of Nigel's girls to rag the ragged gypsy. No wonder he was raging. Anyway, you say the sentence now.
Then there's the oddity margarine, the vegetable substitute for butter, which has a soft G, appropriate to the consistency of the substance, and the following A has the ivy sound, margarine.
When G is followed by other letters, however, including the sounded rather than the silent E, I regret to say that life becomes a little more difficult. Listen to the following words where G is followed by a sounded E. The first set of words having hard G and the second soft G.
Hard G. Get, geld, Gertie.
Anger, banger, bringer, tiger.
Soft G. Gem, general, generate.
Generation, gene, genetic.
genial, gentle, gender,
geography,
geriatric, gesture,
angel, arranger, danger, stranger.
congestion, indigestion, Nigel.
Now you practice saying those words.
It is more trouble than it's worth to try to formulate guidelines for the hardness or softness of G when followed by letters other than those given in the rule we noted above. We just have to learn them. Listen now to a selection of words in which G is followed by I.
Hard G. Giddy, gift, gigabyte, giggle.
Gill, gilt, gird, girth, give, gizzard.
Soft G. Giant, gigantic, agile, fragile.
Gillian, Jill, Jill, gin, engine, ginger.
Gypsy, giraffe, gist, origin, agitate.
Note that the girl's name Gillian and its abbreviation Jill have the soft G, as does the lovely old English liquid measure for a quarter or half a pint, according to the type of fluid, a gill. It is half a pint when it refers to beer, but otherwise a quarter.
A fish has gills, but a half pint of beer is a gill.
Gypsy, by the way, may also be spelt gypsy, which recalls the word's origin from Egyptian.
Now you practice those words.
A different soft G sound is found in the word regime, which has been adopted from French and has kept its French pronunciation.
The mouth shape and movement for this soft G2 sound are virtually the same as for soft G1, for which, remember, you protrude your lips and press the tip of your tongue against the roof of your mouth, just behind your upper teeth, then drop your lower jaw and tongue, and let the air come out above your tongue as it drops.
The only difference is that for the French soft G2, you don't press your tongue against the roof of your mouth as you do for the English soft G1. Instead, you leave a very tiny gap, and when you drop your jaw and expel the air, you avoid the more dental component of that sound and produce a smoother one.
There is little point in asking you to watch the difference because you can't really see it. It is entirely inside the mouth. But listen very carefully now to the two sounds.
J, 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 j. Ginger, regime.
J, 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 j. Ginger, regime.
Now you practice those sounds and say those two words.
Like single G, double G has the hard G sound when it ends a word, as in egg, and when it is followed by L or R. Listen to the following examples and to a little practice sentence.
Gaggle, giggle, agglomerate, aggravate. Aggression, aggrieved, aggregate.
Aggregate, dagger, bigger, bugger, digger, logger, mugger, nagger, nugget, rigger, snigger, snugger.
Ginger giggled at the gigantic gargoyle.
Now you say those words and tell us about Ginger giggling at the gigantic gargoyle.
What a glorious word gargoyle is. Listen to it again. Gargoyle.
You often see them jutting from the walls of old churches, often hideous carved stone images of devils, or a caricature of someone the stonemason didn't like.
Note, however, that the double G is soft in exaggerate and exaggeration. Listen to a sentence to demonstrate this.
Grossly exaggerating Gregory's surgical genius, Gillian Grant greatly aggravated George Gordon's jealous anger.
You will see that we put in the word jealous to remind you that J has exactly the same sound as our English soft G1.
Note also a common misuse of the word aggravate, which means make heavier or more serious, but which is often wrongly used to mean annoy.
Now you tell us how Gillian Grant annoyed jealous George Gordon.
As G is sometimes silent when followed by M, N or H, let's go through these combinations of letters in turn.
Words ending in GM and GN, the latter being more common, never sound the letter G. Listen to these examples.
Align, malign, sign, assign, design, resign, condign, paradigm.
Arraign, deign, feign, reign, foreign, sovereign, ensign.
Diaphragm, phlegm, impugn.
Note particularly the ivy sound of the letter I in ensign, which is often mispronounced.
Remember too the different sounds of the EI combination, according to whether or not it is stressed, as we hear in foreign, which has the short E3 sound, and reign, which has long A1.
Now you say that list of words ending in GM or GN.
And note that the G remains silent when we add a suffix to those basic words, provided that the suffix does not begin with A.
For example, we say assigner, assignee, assignment, assigning, assigned, and sovereignty. And it is the same with compound words like signpost.
But when the suffix begins with A, the G usually recovers its voice, as in signal, signature, assignation, resignation, or phlegmatic, a rare exception being signage.
Words beginning with GN almost always have silent G, as in gnarled, gnat, gnash, gnaw, and, useful if you like pasta, the Italian gnocchi. The rather specialist words gnostic and gnosis also keep their G silent.
But one splendid exception to this usual rule of silence is the name of an African antelope, the gnu, about which the great entertainers Flanders and Swan composed a lovely comic song.
Maestro, if you please.
I'm a gnu. How do you do? I'm the nicest work of nature in the zoo. Actually, it's not really an exception to the general rule that G is silent when in the combination GN beginning a word. The antelope's name was always pronounced gnu, spelt GNU, but with a silent G, until Flanders and Swan in 1956 wrote this song and called it a gnu, and it's been a gnu ever since. Actually, this fellow is not a gnu. He'll be coming on later on. He's a kudu.
Where the GN combination is in the middle of a word, except in the cases we noted of GN word endings extended by a suffix beginning with letters other than A, as in signer, signed, or signing, the G is almost always sounded as in signature or resignation.
Some words with GN in the middle, like cognition and diagnosis, are made up of prefixes attached to root words beginning with GN that are not, or very little, used by themselves in English, and in such cases the prefixes have a similar effect on the GN sound as the suffixes we have just been looking at. Listen to the following examples.
Agnostic, diagnose, diagnostic, diagnosis.
Cognition, recognise, recognition, ignition.
Ignorant, ignore, pregnancy, pregnant.
Impregnate, stagnant, stagnate, lignite.
Pugnacious, pugnacity.
Magnanimous, magnificent, magnet.
And there's Bognor, or Bognor Regis to give it its royal title, a pleasant seaside town on the south coast of England.
Now you practice those words, not forgetting Bognor. And now let's put some of those words into a tongue twister. Listen.
Ignoring the grotesque garden gnomes and stinging gnats, George grimaced regretfully, resignedly gnawing his glutinous gnocchi, but giving some to the pet Gnu out of sight under the gnarled oak.
That sounds like a garden party from hell, doesn't it? Poor George clearly wished he'd never gone to it. But you tell us now how resignedly he behaved, and I hope that he and the Gnu managed to digest the glutinous gnocchi.
And the word sight in that sentence nicely introduces us to the GH combination, which is a delightful English eccentricity.
The GH combination of letters sometimes has silent G and sometimes gets itself involved in some very peculiar and peculiarly English sounds too.
But before Bertie and Pandora take you through the ones you will most commonly meet in speaking English, I wanted to mention our own name, Greenhalgh, which is indeed an oddity. People think it is a foreign name, but though it may originally have had Nordic connections, it was such a very long time ago that it qualifies as being a very English name today. The name comes from the northwest of England, mainly Lancashire and that part of West Yorkshire which adjoins it. As you heard, the GH is pronounced as though it were SH, Greenhalgh. The word halgh is a very old English word for a water meadow or a field in a valley with a river meandering through it. The basic word, which has several spellings and pronunciations besides this one, goes back in this form at least as far as the 12th century. It is not found by itself any longer, but only in combinations like the place names Broadhalgh and Longhalgh, and indeed there is a village in Lancashire called Greenhalgh, where you can see the sad remains of Greenhalgh Castle. This castle was built at the end of the 15th century by Thomas Stanley, Earl of Derby, to defend his rich agricultural estates in the area. But in the 17th century, the Stanleys fought on the losing side in the English civil wars. Greenhalgh Castle was besieged and destroyed by Cromwell's parliamentary army, and all that is left for us to see today is the ruined remnant of a single tower. And not far away from Greenhalgh you'll find another peculiarity of pronunciation, the village of Goosnarr, whose GH is silent, unlike the famous Goosnarr ducks, which are the most succulent in all England. Like the halgh suffix of Greenhalgh, the ARGH of Goosnarr also has Norse origins, but means a hilltop pasture rather than one in a valley. But I mustn't digress further. I'll return you now to Bertie and Pandora, who are waiting to take you through the more frequently met sounds and silences of GH in English.
We'll start with some examples of the silent GH. Note the spelling of the following words and listen very carefully.
especially as this is often a distinctly English spelling, the Americans having largely abandoned GH.
Nigh, sigh, high, though, although.
Through, throughout, alight, blight, bright.
Enlighten, fight, fright, frighten, height.
Light, might, night, plight, right, sight, slight, tight, tighten.
Right, cartwright, playwright, Wainwright, wheelwright.
Court, daughter, fraught, taught.
Bought, fought, naught, ought, sought, thought, drought, ate.
The word right, by the way, with its silent W, is an Old English word for maker. It is not used by itself these days, except in the surname Wright, which is quite common in England, but it is still found in a few compound words such as playwright, literally a maker of plays, or wheelwright, someone who makes wheels, and in compound occupational surnames like Cartwright and Wainwright.
Now you try saying all those silent GH words.
But the GH combination is not always silent.
In the word plough, it has the sound of W, which indeed is how the Americans spell it.
But a more frequent sound is the F sound that it sometimes has, rather than being silent, when following OU or AU.
Listen to these sounded GH words.
Cough,
Enough,
laugh,
laughter,
rough,
tough,
trough.
plough. Now you say those words, copying our pronunciation exactly.
And remember the odd man out, plough.
Now listen to a sentence to practice silent and sounded GH.
Although the ploughman's daughter had a bad cough and had been coughing throughout the night, she had been taught to be tough and thought she ought to get going.
No, don't despair. You will manage it with practice, and we'll be studying and practicing the very varied OU sounds later in the course.
For the present, just do your best to imitate the sounds after listening again as we go through it once more slowly. Listen very carefully now.
Although the ploughman's daughter had a bad cough and had been coughing throughout the night, she had been taught to be tough and thought she ought to get going.
Now you have a go at telling us about the tough ploughman's daughter who wouldn't let a bad cough keep her from her work.
And before we leave the letter G, let's practice a couple more sentences combining almost all its sounds and silences. First, our opening sentence. Listen to it again.
Gordon's phlegmatic surgeon shouldn't go infringing foreign regimes' paradigms.
Now it's your turn. Take a deep breath and go for it.
And as soon as you've recovered from getting your mouth round Gordon's phlegmatic surgeon's infringement of foreign paradigms, listen as we tell you about the gentleman's snobbish reaction to Regimental Sergeant Major George Johnson's marriage to a gypsy girl in Germany.
The gentleman of the regiment laughed and thought it a great joke when Regimental Sergeant Major George Johnson got engaged to a gypsy ploughman's girl in Germany.
Good for R.S.M. Johnson, I say. Now you say this wonderful sentence and bring our study of G to an end with a triumph of love over social prejudice.